So I've noticed over the years, having interacted with many different customers and training people and so on and so forth, that there are two types of people that tend to struggle with trading. And if you take the midpoint of those two types of people, you end up with somebody that has about the right balance of both of those characteristics. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. Please like and comment on the video below. That will allow me to produce better quality videos and more of them in the future. So over the years, I've discovered that I've discovered a lot about myself through trading, but I've also discovered a lot about other people. And it's interesting because I often do videos on trading psychology, but they don't tend to get that many likes or views. And I actually think it's one of the most important things that you can learn, because it's a journey that I've been through. When I was young, I was very risk averse, and as a consequence that made me a terrible trader when I first started trading short term on financial markets. But it's weird because you can give people, I thought that when I first started trading on sports that people were bound to be skeptical. I'm amazed, totally amazed, that people are still skeptical despite all of the work that I've done. But the fact is I'm here, I'm still doing it, I'm doing it as much if not more, because of the complexity and the detail that I understand now, than I have been in the past. But the skepticism continues, and that sort of very often extends because people can't do it. So when anybody comes to work for me, I teach them how to trade, and also, obviously I have done lots of training in the past, and you begin to discover that there are people that are good at trading and those that aren't. And what you tend to find, if I explain the two extremes to you, you'll begin to get a better understanding of where you sit on that spectrum and how you could probably move more towards the center. Because I believe that, having the ability to take risk is very important, but understanding why you're taking that risk and what the potential payoff is gives you the discipline that you require to be able to trade effectively. And if you're at either end of those extremes, you're going to suffer. So we had a great example on the forum. I can't remember what the thread was, but somebody was basically saying that whatever they did didn't work and it was a nightmare, blah 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 blah. So I looked at the thread and I just thought, well, okay, let me give you some advice. So I popped onto the thread and I just said, okay, do the following, very clear instructions for the next, for the rest of the card, and let's see what happens. So the reason that I gave those instructions is because I can look ahead into a market and I can see roughly what's likely to happen. And I can tell many hours out how much a market's going to trade, roughly how it's likely to trade, when the money's going to arrive, how the money arrives on certain runners, and so on and so forth. So, and as we get closer and closer and I get more and more information, my decision becomes better and better. So I gave a really simple instruction, which was do this at this time, trade out at post time. And then as the threads developed, people posting up screenshots saying, well, you know what, actually he was right, and here's another one, here's another one, here's another one, oh my god. And the setup was unique to what we saw on that particular day, but what I said came true. You could see one by one all of those things coming true. So I went back to the original post and just said, how did you get on then? Because they must have made money, but they didn't. They lost money. And it was because they got freaked out when, very short term, the price started to move against them and they closed their position and made a loss. Whereas that wasn't my instruction. My instruction was do this at this point, close it at that point, and go from there. But simply because the market tipped against them slightly, temporarily, they'd closed their position. And there was the problem with what they were doing with trading. But it also exposed this particular trading type that you tend to see. Now I'm not saying that they're either one of those extremes, it was just a neat example to throw into the video for you. But typically you tend to see two extremes in the market. On one side you see people that are over-analytical, and this could be due to their background. Maybe they have a mathematics background, maybe they sort of have an academic side to them. And that's fine because the market requires all participants. What we tend to find with people that are deeply academic is that they're trying to over quantify stuff. So they're trying to slice out every piece of risk that you could ever possibly imagine, and that's impossible. If I walk across the street today, a meteorite could come crashing down and wipe out the town. There's a demonstrable chance that could happen. It's very, very small, but there's a demonstrable chance. And therefore you could sort of say, well, I'm not going to cross the road because I could get killed by a meteorite, when in fact there's much more problems and dilemmas right in front of you. So yeah, the over-analytical types have a problem with taking risk. They always sort of say, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? And it's like, okay, back here. Yeah, but why should I back here? Just back there. And they sort of refuse to, and they're going, well, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And then the trade pays off, and they go, oh, yeah, well, yeah, but what happened if it went in the other direction? But it didn't. It did not go in the other direction. Oh, yeah, but what happened if it would? And it's like, well, so the over-analytical types tend to sit on that end of the spectrum. And my message to you throughout this video is that actually, you know, I sat at one end of these spectrums. I'm going to leave you to guess which one it is. And I had to correct my behavior, so it's perfectly possible to do. And I feel that's the biggest leap that I've taken in the time that I've been trading, is the ability to take risk. So that gives you a hint straight away there. But when you look at the over-analytical types, they have a real problem taking risks because they're trying to quantify it. And the fact is that some stuff is unquantifiable. I've got unbelievable amounts of data. I've looked at everything from milliseconds to hours out. I've looked at the way the market works, the major participants in the market, and so on. So, you know, I can describe all of that in beautiful detail. I've quantified every single thing that I possibly can. But that's just to improve my trading. Now, whatever I look at within that, there's always an element of risk. And I don't let that stop me from doing it. If there's a foggy area within whatever I'm doing, I just accept that there's a foggy area. And, you know, half the time it's going to work and half the time it may not work. But that foggy area, I can't describe any better. It's just fog, it's a mess, it's random. And so there's nothing I can do. So, for example, if a big backer arrives in the market, you know, you can't predict that. You can't tell that somebody's suddenly going to turn up with 5 or 10 grand. But you can describe when that person's likely to turn up, what sort of money that they're going to use, and what influence that would have on the market. But you just can't tell when they're going to turn up. So you could be in a trade, he turns up, destroys it, and you just go, oops, and that's it. But if you attempt to quantify or over-quantify it, you may not take risks because you're saying, well, what happens if that goes wrong? But also you fall into the intelligence trap as well. You elevate yourself above others, and you refuse to accept that there's any other way. And you have to have a sense of humility when you're trading. You're going to get knockbacks, you're going to get situations that don't work out the way that they should do, so you have to take it on the chin. You just have to accept that you're going to screw up now and again, and you just have to move on. You don't dwell on it, you don't spend any time on it. But with the if you get people that are trying to over-quantify stuff, especially if they're from an academic background, they may feel that they're above all of that, and their way is the only way, and there's nobody else can do it because they've looked at it and there's no answer to it. And time again, I've got into discussions, in inverted commas, with this type of person that's basically trying to prove you wrong by force of character, when in fact they are wrong, but they just cannot see it. And there's no way that you can explain it to them. You can sit down and discuss it with them, and they just refuse to accept the truth. And there was a brilliant article written by somebody that went to disprove a trading strategy. And it was completely wrong. It was a beautiful example of exactly what I'm talking about here. So I captured it and kept it in case it was ever deleted. And I used that as a great example for people who come and see me, or when I discuss risk, at how people can get things so incredibly dramatically wrong despite being quite intelligent. They've just missed some of the most obvious things that you could ever possibly imagine. So yeah, you have these people that are over-analytical, want to quantify everything and can't take risk. And that's one extreme. And then of course we flip it over to the other side, and the other extreme is people who take too much risk, who don't quantify anything, and it's just a gut feel that they're using to trade the market. And that may work for a short period of time, but unfortunately it's just not good enough in the long term. Over all the years that I've been trading, I don't know how many people I've seen come and go, and people arrive in the market, they stumble across something that generally works until the day it doesn't, and boom, suddenly they're out of business. Suddenly they're not as positive as they were. And what I've managed to achieve over the years is a balance of these two. So, you know, I did lean on one side or the other at different moments in my career, predominantly on one side. But I've learnt to basically not only be able to quantify all of the things that are going on in the market, but also to be able to act on them. You know, when I see an opportunity, I can jump on it. And I'm really good at jumping on opportunities now. I just a split second, and I'll pick up on an opportunity and start doing something. So you need that balance. And the problem that you have over on this side is that people could be trading, they've got something that generally works, they can't explain why, but it's difficult to scale that. You'll never have the confidence to scale unless you can explain exactly what's going on and why that particular strategy works. But also you'll have a tendency to rush in too early, or it may be that when a situation goes against you, you may just dump the position and you may just be a bit too gung-ho. So you need a bit of that oomph to be able to take risks, because there's no point in not having that and not being able to take risk, because that's where the money is. Sort of risk is equal, or more or less equal, to reward, but your objective when you're trading is to try and earn a bit of money at the lowest possible risk. But you need to take risk in order to do that, if you understand where I'm coming from. So you need to be able to have the balls to take that position, but you also need to be able to describe why you did that, because if the market shifts over time, which it always does, the market never changes because it's always changing. That's the default mode of the market. When the market shifts slightly, you need to be able to detect what that shift was and then adjust your behavior to account for it. And that shift could be any number of reasons: market participants, the way the exchange works, new exchanges that come along, whatever. There are many different things that could mess that up. So it's important to understand and really begin to get to grips with exactly what you're attempting to do. If you just go in the market and you're busy trading and you're not completely sure what the exact payoff or why that occurs, then if the market shifts, you're going to lose that. But also on that side of things, if your trading is emotionally driven, then you'll tend to, when the market prods you, you tend to react to it, and that can be a bad thing. And that's what, in the example I gave earlier, was happening. Was the person would almost certainly have made a profit if they'd held their position, which is what I said they should do. But when the market went slightly against them, they panicked and got out, and that's the sort of characteristic and behaviour you see there. And also the ability of these people to lose their way in the market. When the market shifts, they have no idea what's happened. And all of the data that I've kept over many years, right from day one when there was virtually nothing in the market, allows me to look at the market and just detect if there are any subtle changes, and then I can try and position myself ahead of those. So ultimately, you don't want to be on one extreme or the other. You want to be in the middle. Probably impossible to be exactly in the middle, and you may lean one way or the other, but that can be reflected in whatever trading style you have. But it is important to understand that there are those two extremes that are as dangerous as each other, and in fact you want to position yourself somewhere on that scale. You want to be able to implement a trading strategy and do a trading strategy. You want to be able to take that risk, but it's important to understand exactly the dynamics involved within that, because that will allow you to grow and scale up what you're doing, and also transplant a strategy from one market into another, and so on and so forth. But one thing you don't want to do is be either side of those two elements of the trading market.